All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. So this webinar will also be recorded for folks who aren't able to make it today. Hi everyone, my name is Max, and today I'll be going over how you can use Maptitude and the tools in Maptitude to create maps that are specific to the real estate industry. So I'll be monitoring the chat for any questions that pop up. You can type them in the chat. But for now, we can go ahead and jump into the webinar here. So for today's session, I'll be using this Excel spreadsheet called Sample Properties. Here we have an ID field. We have the street address, city, state, and zip code, as well as the estimated value for each of these properties. So we can treat each of these columns as a separate property. So now we can go into Maptitude and upload that Excel file as points on a map. And to do that, I'll choose New Map of my data table spreadsheet. I'll go ahead and select the Excel file. And here, I'll choose the correct columns in Excel and make sure that those correspond to the correct fields in Maptitude. Then I'll go ahead and locate our records by address, zip code, or city. And the image here on the left also shows that our properties will be mapped as points on the map. We have the option to link our data, which means that if the Excel file updates, then I can have the map in Maptitude update as well. So that can reflect changes in the estimated value, for example, or changes in the address if I want to remove a property. If it's no longer available or add an additional property, those changes will be reflected on the map. For right now, I'll just choose the import option. You can also choose a type of theme. For this one, we can do a size theme based on the estimated value. So then properties with a larger estimated value or a higher estimated value will be drawn as larger points on the map. I want to display labels next to the property, and we can use the street address. We'll go ahead and click Finish for now. We'll see what other types of analyses Maptitude can run later. And now Maptitude will tell me how many of my records were located, and it looks like all 60 of them were located here. Now I'm able to see all of my properties on the map, and I can see in the legend in the bottom right corner, the sizes correspond to the estimated value. If I want to temporarily turn off this theme, I can go ahead and go to the left-hand side here and toggle this green check mark off. So now all of the dots or points are the same size. With Maptitude, we also get access to a whole host of free data products. So one of them is the landmarks layer. So I can go to Map, Layers, and then Add Layer. And I can go ahead and browse for the free data product here. So we have business location layers, as well as the landmarks, which are points of interest. So for example, if I wanted to see all of the restaurants in this area here that I've mapped, I can go ahead and add that here. So now I'm able to see my properties as well as the restaurants close to them. So let's say I wanted to take into account, or I wanted to take a look closer at one specific property. I can zoom in. I can click and drag to zoom in using the zoom in button here. And let's say I wanted to find out the demographics around this specific location here. I can do that using the freehand radius tool in the bottom left-hand corner. And I can either click and drag to draw that radius, or I can click once and enter in a size. So let's say in a half-mile radius, I want to see what the demographics are. After I've created this radius here, I can go ahead and right-click and then choose Export to Excel. I will call this one 1813 Lakeshore, correspond with the property name. And then it will automatically open in Excel. So I'll be able to see the point of the property itself, as well as the demographics here in this sheet. So I can see the estimated median household income is 104,000. And I can also see the restaurants that are in a half-mile radius from that property. And if I were to add additional points of interest, then I would be able to see all of those represented as different sheets in this Excel file. So that's how you are able to export the demographics as well as the points around a specific address or property. So I can go ahead and right-click and delete this. And then I'll go ahead and undo my zoom so we can see all of our properties. Okay. So let's say we wanted to find out the demographics for all of our properties. So instead of doing the freehand radius for each property separately, we can run what's called a buffer or radius analysis. So to do that, I'll right-click the properties layer, choose Make Working Layer, and then I'll go to Tools, Analysis, and then Buffers. From here, I can go ahead and specify the radius of the buffer. So in this case, we'll do half mile, and we want each location to have its own separate report. And then for the name of the property, we'll just use the street address. Next, we can choose Calculate Demographics. And then we can also optionally choose Create Report to generate a report for us to take a look at. So as we're waiting for this to load, did anybody have any questions? You can type your questions into the chat. Once this is finished loading, we'll be able to get a buffer report like the one here. So it's a pre-formatted document that you can export to PDF or Excel. And here we're able to see each of the addresses or properties that we have, as well as the demographic information that's estimated for each of those properties. And if you want to directly analyze them in Maptitude, you can use this table right here. I can also right-click and choose Sort Increasing or Decreasing to sort by a specific column. So for example here, 737 Hinsdale Drive has the highest estimated median household income among the properties that I have here. And I can also right-click any one of the cells here, then choose Zoom, and that will zoom the map to where that property is. And I can export this table out into Excel by going to File, Export, and then Table. Okay, so that's how we're able to calculate demographics for all of our points all at the same time. Next, we can go ahead and take a look at some of the imagery options that we have. So let's say we're preparing a map and we want to use satellite imagery to show what's exactly on the map instead of having these features shown here. I can go to Map, Imagery, and then choose one of the satellite options. You can choose Google Satellite here as an example. And from there, I'm able to see satellite imagery at this particular location. I can turn these different layers on and off in order to make the map look nicer. We can export this map here by going to File, Export, and then choosing one of the image or PDF options. One of the other data products that we have is the geodemographic segmentation data. So I'll go ahead and add that in. That is just another way of us being able to determine the demographics for a specific location. So let me go ahead and toggle off the buffers, and then we'll zoom out here. So this geodemographic segmentation data separates areas into one of these subsegments that you see here in the legend. So I can see that there are several demographic segments or categories here. And let's say we wanted to find out where each of our properties are located in. So which subsegment is each property located in? I can do this by going to the properties layer, right click, make working layer, and then I can go to tools, analysis, and then tag points by area. So this allows me to tag each of the properties I have here based on the subsegment of the geodemographic segmentation here. So I'll choose the segmentation layer, and then I'll choose to tag with the subsegment. So this will get us a new column here in our properties layer with the demographic segment that each property is associated with. And there's more information on what exactly these subsegments mean in the documentation for this product here. And the geodemographic segmentation layer here is free for all users of the current version of Maptitude. So if you have Maptitude 2023, you're able to download this data as well. Okay, did anybody have any questions so far? Right, so there's a question, where can we get the data dictionary for the segmentation descriptions? Yes, so once you download the data, it will appear in the CC data folder in your C drive, and then the geodemographic segmentation folder will have the demographic handbook as well as the documentation or getting started PDF here. Oh, sorry, not the getting started one, it's the other PDF, the demographic handbook here that contains the definitions. So for example, the A1 subsegment has these demographic values. Right, let me know if you have any other questions. Another thing that you can do in Maptitude here is, let's say you needed to visit all 60 of these properties with a route. You can do, or you can use the routing tool here by going to Tools, Routing and Directions, and then Routing and Directions Manager, and you can create routes directly in Maptitude. So I can go ahead and create a new route. I'll call this route of properties. And from here, I can either add stops by clicking on the map. So let's first add a starting position. So I'll just click there, and then I'll call, right click rename, call this one office as an example. Now we can add all 60 of these other points here by using this button right here, add stops based on a selection set. And then I can go ahead and add all of the properties here, all 60 of them, into this route that I have here. So what Maptitude can do with this route is it can optimize the route so that you're visiting these stops in the most optimal way possible. So I'll go ahead and click Optimize. And the stops here will be rearranged so that I am making the most efficient route or most efficient trip possible. Looks like this is the most efficient route here. I can go ahead and export this into a PDF directions report or into Excel for the ordering itself. There was a question here, if you wanted to search for only one type of segmentation value, how would you do that? That's a great question. So let me go ahead and close out of the Routing and Directions Manager here. And the routes are saved in the workspace. So workspaces are the file extensions used for Maptitude. But for the segmentation data, toggle that back on. Let's say I wanted to just take a look at areas that are in the A1 settled and content group. I can filter or select those areas by right-clicking, going to Make Working Layer. Then I'll go to Selection in the top left, and then Select by Condition. So here we'll choose all of the areas where subsegment. Then here I can choose equals. And then for the values, we'll choose A1 settled and content. And then for the name of the set, for the name of this grouping, we'll call it A1. So now we can go ahead and click OK. So you'll notice that the blue color for the A1 subsegment is now turned green. That's because it is now selected here. So if I expand if I expand segmentation, I'll be able to see the different sets or different groups. And if I just want to see the areas that are in the A1 category, I can right-click and then choose Show the Set Only. And now I'm just taking a look at the areas that are A1. And similarly, I can do the same thing for our properties layer. If I go to the properties layer, right-click, Make Working Layer, I can take it a step further and have each subsegment be its own grouping. So if I go to Selection and then select by list this time, I can choose the subsegment column and have each subsegment be its own grouping. So now if I expand sets, I can see all of the different subsegments here. And let's say I wanted to just take a look at the properties in the A1 areas. I can go ahead and right-click and then choose Show this set only. And that will filter out the map, and I'll just take a look at those properties in those demographic areas. Right, any other questions? Yes, could you give an example of how to use the Maptitude business pattern data? So not sure which exact one the business pattern data is. Was it the business location? Business location data? The business location layers contain point information for a variety of different chains, brands. So for example, if I wanted to take a look at a specific brand of restaurants, I can go into the restaurants category and take a look at specific brands here. The 2022 zip code business patterns data. So for that, I believe I'll need to go to the network to get this. Since I don't have it downloaded on my computer, I believe it's the zip business patterns here. So go ahead and download that. So this has business counts at the zip code level. So if I go ahead and open a data view for it, so if I right click and choose new data view, I can take a look at all the information attached to the zip code data or the zip code level. So here I can see, for example, the total number of establishments or total number of businesses that reside in each of these zip codes, and I can see them by their size as well. And I can also drill down further to specific industries, such as this is timber tract. And I can represent that data on the map using a color theme. So to do that, I can right-click, make working layer, and then click the color theme option here. Then I can choose the column or field that I want to show as a color theme. For this example, let's do total establishments. And then if I go ahead and click apply, each zip code here will be colored based on how many establishments are in each of these zip codes. Okay, so there's another question here. Looks like this might take a while since it is loading the data from network. So let's go ahead and hit cancel for now. There's another question about consumer expenditure. So we can go ahead and take a look at that data as well. So we'll go to map, layers, add layer, and then the consumer expenditure data is here. We can right click and then choose new data view. So this shows consumer expenditure or expenditure for the average household at the census tract level. So I can see the number of households in each census tract or in each area, as well as the total expenditure of the average household. And it's also further broken down into specific categories here. So these are food and consumable items. If I go further right here, I'll be able to see other information as well. So this is breakfast at fast food places. We have wine at full service restaurants. And you're also able to use this information and show that as a color theme on the map using the same steps previously. So we can leverage this information in the example that we have here. So let's say we wanted to show all of our properties again. And go ahead and right click, uncheck show this set only. We'll see all of our other properties here. For now, let's say I don't want these different colors. I can go to selection, settings. Sorry, let me make properties a working layer. So right click, make working layer, and then I'll go to selection, settings, and I can click and drag and change the status to inactive. So that way, all the properties are blue. There was another question using the Maptitude traffic count data to determine which business location has a higher amount of traffic. Yes, that's a great question as well. So I can go to map, layers, add layer, and then we'll add the annual average daily traffic layer here. So this has the traffic amount or the annual average traffic amount for streets in the US. So here we're able to leverage this data by adding a new column in the properties layer and then adding the annual average daily traffic for each of these properties that we have on the map. And to do that, I'll go ahead and open a new data view. Actually, before I do that, I believe we already have one open in the windows here. Let me close this data view that's open. Go to properties layer. And then we'll need to create a new column here. And to do that, I'll go right click, then choose modify. Then I'll go to add field. and then I'll call this field AADT. And then we'll change this to an integer field, which is a whole number. So I'll go ahead and click OK. And I'll have a new column here that is currently blank. So to fill this in, we can right click and then go to fill. And for this case here, we want to choose the tag option. So we want to tag each of our properties using the average daily traffic layer here. And instead of tagging the distance to the feature, we want to tag it with the annual average daily traffic. So what this is doing is each property will have an annual average daily traffic value for the closest street. So if I go ahead and click OK, I'll be able to see those values populate here. And I can do the same thing earlier. I can right click, sort decreasing, and then I can see which property has the highest traffic nearby. And I can right click and then choose zoom to zoom in where that is on the map. And it looks like they're right by this highway here, so it makes sense. All right, great. Hope this was helpful. Let me know if anybody has any questions. We have 1 minute left for this webinar. You can also reach out via email or phone. The email you can reach out to is support@caliper.com. You can also reach out to sales@caliper.com if you have any questions. But okay, I hope this was helpful for everyone. Thanks for joining in.